This is the VIP Podcast, Virginia in Politics. Let's listen to host Chris Saxman explore the personalities and policies that connect the Commonwealth. The VIP Podcast is brought to you by the VCTA, Broadband Association of Virginia, and Virginia Free. The views and opinions expressed here do not necessarily reflect the views and opinions of the VCTA and Virginia Free or our sponsors.
And we're back. This is Chris Saxman on the VIP Podcast. That's Virginia in Politics, but it's also very important people like my new guest, Delegate Michelle Maldonado. Welcome.
Thank you. It's great to be here.
Thanks for coming in. New delegate. This is your second session.
Yes.
Second session.
First term, second session. Kind of like charades. First term, second session.
Very good. Always with the jokes early, which I like in the show. I think you might be one of the, if there was an asterisk to the 2021 election, the primary in June of 21, you might be one of two people who beat Lee Carter on the same day in different races.
Yes.
How was that? What was that dynamic like?
Well, first I'll just say that I had no aspirations to be in politics. I didn't know anything about it. I was like many people sitting on the couch watching essentially our communities, our families, our nation kind of being torn apart at the seams with everything that was happening, from the border to George Floyd to January 6th. And I just one day was like,
that's it.
I'm getting in the race. I'm
Really?
going to see
Had
if
you
I
been
can
politically
help.
active at all? In the party, locally, nothing?
Nothing.
Complete outsider.
A lot of the ways that I tried to affect change in the world was through the work that I do in the world, but it wasn't political. And because I was so new and I was so naive, I had no idea that Virginia allows people to run for multiple offices at the same time.
Right.
So I didn't get in the race to run against Lee Carter because I
Okay.
thought he was doing something wrong or anything. I had seen that he had announced, I think that January, that he was running for governor. So then I was like, when I looked, I said, so I guess the seat's open. So
wow.
That's how I got into the race, and then found out, in fact, we were on the same call with our Democratic committee when they announced that we were both on the ballot together.
Wow. So that's extraordinary. So you wanted to run.
Yes.
You looked at the district.
Yes.
And you said there's a Democrat here.
Yes.
If he had not been running for another seat, would you have run? Do you think?
I probably would have done my homework more about, did I need to challenge somebody
Sure.
that was an incumbent? But because I didn't do that, because I thought he wasn't running for it.
Right, but this is just strictly from your gut.
This was from my gut. I was looking around. I have a son. My husband and I were looking around at what was happening in the world, and we wanted better for all the kids.
Sure.
You know, every generation inherits a whole bunch of stuff from the people before them, and I wanted them to inherit better.
Right.
Yeah.
Change. I understand that gut feel. Like,
Yes.
This shall not stand. If that's, was that your?
Yes.
Was there a moment?
There were 3 moments that I think that led up to my breaking point to say that's it.
What was the first one?
The first one was the crisis at the southern border, and when
Okay.
I was looking at the trauma I thought that was happening with children being separated from their parents. And I think that most people can agree that this country has never addressed properly and fully our immigration problem. So it doesn't matter if you're red or blue or you're purple, no administration has fully addressed it at the federal level. And so for me, that was, in that moment, it was like looking at how does trauma form in a human? How does trauma get started, and how does it then get carried throughout a person's life? And I looked at those moments and saw those children. And so that was a first kind of bell gong for me. Like,
And
where
what
are
did
the
that
people?
say to you? I mean, I looked at your website, and you have two, basically, your political and your professional. And your professional really spoke to me on your company and what you do, and that is your world. When you talk about mindfulness and trauma, I mean, that's your business, right? That's what your profession is.
So I do leadership development, but I think that we cannot expect people to lead others if they can't effectively lead themselves. So it's the leading self, leading others. And when you think about that, it's dealing with that whole internal world that we have. What are our belief systems? What are the filters and perspectives that we are looking through to perceive the world around us and our place and our role in it? And so that moment was we're creating people, young people who will grow up with this trauma in their bodies. And we know after that moment that many of those children had a difficulty being reunited with their parents. So there was continuing trauma that was happening, and trauma sits in the body. We know from the research trauma sits in the body.
It sits in the body. You and my wife, if my Michelle with one L was here, y'all be gone for about 3 or 4 hours. I'm telling you, she is she said, there's a saying she has, and I'll have to get it for you because she's brilliant at it, and she expresses it far better than I do. But she does. It lives in your body and in places.
It does.
In specific places.
Yes.
And she will diagnose someone as having this problem in their world, and she's like, oh, if it's in your gut, it's because of X, Y, and Z. Mm-hmm. If it's in your back, you're holding on to something.
Yes.
And it's amazing the level of work that has been done in this field. Are you able? Let's talk about those other two moments. Mm-hmm. But when that first moment hit, what did you say to yourself?
So if you think back to
the border separation policy,
right? If you think back to that time in the prior administration, and you look at it, and in that moment, what it said to me, what I heard myself saying out loud was, "Where are the people who want to stand in the gap and bring us back together while we address these issues?" And what we were seeing was more and more divisiveness, more and more people standing entrenched. So that was the first question. Yes.
Trench.
Yes. And then the second one was the summer of George Floyd, Ahmaud Arbery, Breonna Taylor, where we were dividing even more.
Okay,
that gap was, that was June 2020.
That was 2020, and the border separation policy preceded that.
Yes.
So it was a buildup.
Yes.
And
then January 6th.
And then January 6th.
Yes.
Was that the moment?
That was the moment when I kept saying,
"Three
where
strikes
are the
and
people?"
He's out. I'm done.
It was what is happening to humanity? What is happening to us that we are allowing ourselves to blindly stay in one side? So we're staying in judgment and certainty instead of allowing a little bit of space to have discernment so we can have understanding and communication. So that January 6th, it wasn't just that January 6th happened.
Sure.
What really struck me, I mean, it was bad enough in my view that it happened, regardless of which side you sit on that, the fact that happened in our country is huge.
Oh, look, let's just be honest with this one. If a Democrat had done this, the Republicans would have been out of their minds.
Of course.
And that's just you talk about the trenches.
Course.
I mean, they're just lobbing the same
Well,
grenades.
that's the ultimate example of the trenches, right? January 6th. But what also happened afterwards, that there were people on both sides of the aisle who named it as it was, called it what it was. And then in a few short days and weeks, people started to change it and call it just peaceful touring of the White House or the Capitol. And so the reframing of that event was really what broke me.
Right.
And I said, that's it. When I started to say, where are the people? With the buildup,
I get it.
happening, it was like,
that was the tipping
maybe
point.
I'm one of the people that I keep asking for. And I said, let me try. That was it.
Okay.
And I had 2 weeks to go.
For the filing deadline.
2 weeks to go. I had to go get signatures.
What's the filing deadline?
It was in mid-March to get the signatures at the time.
Oh, okay.
And I decided apparently
that's quick.
2 weeks before, and I knocked the doors. I mean, I've been involved in my community. I was a band mom, so I knew lots of parents. Anybody who has teenagers that are involved in marching band knows.
So you've never done this before?
Never
Not involved in local politics?
No.
Worked on any campaigns, volunteered, knocked doors, make phone calls, make contributions? Nothing?
Now, I did write letters. One of my dear friends always organizes folks in our community to write postcards.
Okay.
So I would take postcards every year and do that. But I never marched. The only time I ever marched was when I was in 8th grade and Jesse Jackson was running for president, and he was marching down 125th Street in Harlem, and I went and marched with him. My father thought it would be a good.
Were you living in New York then?
I was living in Jersey. No, I was in 8th grade, so I had like
That's right, you said 8th.
yes, I did go to school in New York, but I was much younger when I did that. Thank you.
which was that 84 or 80?
Yeah, so that was 80. Probably 80. I feel like it was 80 because I think it was like 8th grade.
Okay.
Yeah, so early 80s.
Okay, so politically aware and conscious of what's going on, but not engaged. And then,
Right.
and then 2 weeks later, you're positioned for the ballot, and
Yes.
a couple months later, you win the primary, and you go into a general election, and you win that.
I did.
How'd it feel?
I felt so honored. I felt the word that always comes to mind is responsible.
Oh,
I felt honored and responsible
to
to the people who had
Okay.
elected me, because there is such a great obligation and duty that you have when you sit in this seat, to listen to everybody that you represent, not just the ones that elected you, not just the ones that agree with you, but also the ones who don't.
right.
And I think when we do more of that and can understand it, I've had so many people come to me and say, previous people, because they weren't part of my party, wouldn't listen to me even though they represented me. I'm like, come on in, doors
Right.
open, let's have a conversation.
Right.
And at the end of it, even if there isn't agreement, there is such a deeper level of understanding. And with the understanding comes the stripping out of the dehumanization element that
Right.
is so popular right
Right,
now.
right. And it's easy to put people in their boxes and their trenches
If you
to
don't know them.
take it away
you
from
know.
it, based on whatever their identity or their political identity or what
Yes.
you thought they were. What's the one preconceived notion you had about serving the General Assembly that yet you were like, doesn't exist, not true?
Well, I think
You sound like a very open-minded person.
yeah. So there are some things that people do in terms of strategy and kind of how do we keep the other party at not advancing as much. I don't like that. I don't think that.
But you did not think that happened.
I did not think that happened in the way that it does. So
Right.
I'll give you, it didn't occur to me
The depth
that people would. Yes, the depth of it. So you understand it sort of on a theoretical level, but the practical
Right.
nature and experience of it is very different. And so there are strategies in place that kill good bills just because of the party of the person carrying it, right? And so I look at that and say, but that doesn't hurt me.
Right.
That hurts the people that both of us
Right.
represent,
Right.
because it's a good bill and it's not something over a divisive issue, right? So if somebody in your party were carrying that bill and you would 100% support it,
Right.
you should 100%
Like the January
support
6th
it.
example. If
Right.
your party was the other party, you'd be like, what's
Right.
going on here?
So there's a lot of that I think that is disappointing to me.
Disappointing.
It's very disappointing.
And in your role as a leadership development professional,
Yeah.
do you see that as good leadership or bad leadership?
I think it's failed leadership.
Failed.
I think it's failed leadership because, some people will call it strategy, and it is a strategy, but just because something's strategy doesn't make it right,
Right.
and it doesn't make it productive and something that's sustainable with legs that produces a good legacy.
Right.
And I think because I do the leadership work, the inside and the outside work, coming here with that lens, that filter, I view the body politic and the House and the Senate differently in how
Right.
we show up and how we behave. I view it differently. I see people, like celebrating as badges of honors of how many people they kind of kept at bay, how many bills they killed over. And I think, but what's if you just sort of strip out the people and you look at the essence of what's trying to pass, you don't have a philosophical difference or conflict with that. So then it really sort of circles back to ego and power. And what do you do when you have power?
Right.
And I think that's what reveals you. If the way you show up when you have all the eggs in your basket actually says a lot more about you than how you show up when you have no eggs in your basket.
Right. Can you point to a vote that you made that said, no, I'm going to vote for the bill because it's just a good bill relative?
Oh
to the
yeah,
party?
I've done it. I've co-patroned with fellow Republicans, but I believe if the bill is good, the bill is good.
Right.
I did a bill last year where I joined Delegate Greenhall. There's not a whole lot of things we agree on, but we agreed on that, and that's my philosophy. If there's
Sure.
something we can
Right.
agree on,
Right.
let's move it forward. And it was an education bill that provided a tax credit for teachers.
Okay.
In my family, there are 5 siblings across marriage and remarriages, and 2 of my siblings were homeschooled. And I saw how my mother worked to get supplies to educate my brother and sister and teach them. My father was a math teacher, and I saw how he, just like my mother, this was after they were divorced, he would dig into his pocket, just like my mother, to get supplies for the class because
Sure.
teachers don't have enough money to fund the classes. The same things we're talking about with teachers today.
Right.
As a child, I watched in my family happening with my parents and grandparents who were educators. So, and then before, when I left the practice of law, there was a point where I wanted to become a teacher, and I was going to go into a private school. And the private school teachers make less than the public school teachers.
Mm-hmm.
And the world already acknowledges that public school teachers don't make enough money.
Right.
So, homeschool teaching, private school teaching, public school teaching. The bill was simply to give a tax credit for those supplies that you come out of pocket with. And there were people and organizations against the bill because it included homeschool and it included private school teachers. And I stood up and I said, a teacher is a teacher is a teacher. It's a good bill. And all of these folks who are trying to educate our children shouldn't have to go into their pockets to do it. We should be able to support that.
Okay. And how was that received by your caucus?
I don't think anybody else joined me. Maybe one other person did.
Wow.
Joined me with that.
So I had those moments myself.
Mm-hmm.
I still, every once in a while, someone will bring up a vote or two that I veered off of, and I was like, it didn't affect the vote back home.
Right.
People don't, it's not that there was a particular group that was upset, and they came into my office, and it was, I won't get into the bill, but they came in and they expressed their concern with my vote. I said, this is a deep philosophical difference that we have. I've heard you. I hope you've heard me. I come from a free market perspective on this particular issue. I understand where you are. My vote's not changing.
Right. Yeah.
That's just it. It's because I have to go home and put my head on the pillow.
Exactly.
Right? I have to look myself in the mirror when I'm shaving and go, you still did what you think is the right thing. And even though I represent the district and the people, there's a point at which your conscience has to be your guide, and that's a very delicate balance sometimes.
It is. And you have to find alignment. I want to say though that my party didn't pressure me. I mean, they were very respectful of my decision.
Good.
Nobody pressured me.
Good.
They just didn't join me, right? But also, Delegate Ringall had some challenges on her side.
Oh, yeah.
And ultimately the bill went through, but only with public school teachers. So there was a lot of pushback against it.
Is that how it got through the Senate?
I think that's how it got through the Senate, which was, just allowing it to be, to have it apply to public school teachers.
So you have a heavy education background.
Just from family.
That's,
I grew up in it.
Culturally.
Yeah,
I mean, it's a big one. And you went to Columbia.
I went to Barnard.
Barnard at Columbia.
Yes.
Okay. Is it a difference? Is that like
well, I mean, up until 1982, Columbia College was all male. And then it went co-ed, but Barnard stayed single sex. But when I was there, I mean, I took lots of classes across the street.
Is it today still single sex?
It is. But it's got
really?
It's got a special relationship with Columbia University.
That's great. Okay. Okay. And then GW Law School.
Yes.
And you're a practicing attorney?
I was.
You was. You're no longer practicing.
Nope. I actually went to law school to do business. So think about, this is like in the 80s, and I went because I wanted to be what, in my mind, a corporate activist. My sister was the one that did like community health, raise money for AIDS. This is in the 80s. And I remember her lamenting that they weren't getting enough traction from businesses. And I loved business. And I said, we need more people inside the organizations who are willing to do the right thing. So my sister stayed that track, and I went that track, and I felt that the law degree was going to help me be more effective. It was a time where there weren't a lot of women. There weren't a lot of people of color, certainly. Mm-hmm. And so I felt that the law degree was going to give me a little bit more weight in the room to be able to have these conversations. And then immediately, because I had a law degree, would put me in positions where I'd be at the outset working with executive levels, decision makers, and be able to affect change differently.
So all along, the theme is education for the sake of change, making the world a better place.
Yep. That's my family.
And so has that been your family track all along?
It has. It's expressed itself in various ways. And because I like variety and I like to do new things, the way it expresses itself could be in a business role. It could be in creating a program for teens. It could be working with Customs and Border Patrol agents. It could be working in another country, doing something. I do a lot of work with the UN Foundation and peacekeepers and humanitarian aid workers, as well as your regular corporate folks.
And still
know.
you have time to find the run in the House of Delegates and serve.
Well, I've had to minimize more of that work so I can maximize my time here in this work. But
How's
yes,
that balance going?
Last year it was very difficult. The first time trying to figure it out and trying to honor all my contracts for my job.
Sure.
And then so I wised up very quickly and then began to create different timelines for my contracts in my business to be able to work well with this schedule.
Okay. Let's go into a little bit. What I like to do is rapid fire questions
Okay.
for folks on
Let's do it.
who you are more not intimately but interestingly.
Okay.
Favorite books.
All right. Favorite books. Okay. So I love. My gosh, I just finished reading so many books. Why am I blanking on books? Okay, let's come back to that one.
TV shows.
Okay, so I love like the cop and law shows, like so Law and Order,
Really?
SWAT,
SWAT.
Blue.
What were your favorite ones
Blue
growing
Blood.
up?
Growing up, I watched I didn't watch cop shows growing up. I watched stuff like Brady Bunch and The Partridge Family and
The afternoon Brady Bunch and Partridge Family shows.
Yes, I watched all those.
After school.
Yeah,
Okay, those are your faves.
they were.
Okay.
Flintstones,
I met
of course.
all the Brady Bunch once.
Did you really?
Remember the episode where they're at the amusement park?
Yes.
I was at that amusement park. I was 7. Met them all.
Amazing.
I was starstruck.
Yeah, I
Starstruck.
bet.
Favorite movies?
Oh, The Matrix, but the first one.
The
Because
Matrix.
The first Matrix, because that was the first time the Wachowskis had used that kind of cinematography in Hollywood and film, and it was groundbreaking. I also love the Joy Luck Club, and
Okay.
I love stories that weave in real world issues with triumphant endings.
Okay. So Matrix and the Joy Luck Club.
Yeah.
Okay. News sources. Where do you get your news? What influences?
So I try
Michelle
not to watch
Maldonado.
cable news because
try not
I
to.
try not to. It frustrates me.
Sucks you in there.
I will, because I think there's too much bias in it. I don't want their opinion. I want their analysis. And so if I can find, and I also look at conservative and liberal media, but I try to look for the anchors who will do analysis and not give me opinion. And so sometimes I will.
Who would that be? Give me an example.
So
Who does that well
so
for you?
let's see. I think I like some of the folks. Like I like Wolf Blitzer on
Okay.
CNN.
Okay.
I like an MSNBC. I like Velshi. I like
Ali Velshi.
Ali Velshi. I like
So is my wife.
yeah.
Oh, I like his voice.
And I like my husband and I watch on Sundays. He really loves him. Gosh, I'm blanking on his name.
Okay, let's come
Anyway.
back. Let's go back to
Okay,
books.
The books. Okay. So I like books that are about transformation. So I like The Alchemist.
Okay. Okay.
I like things that talk about so the body keeps the score, which is about how emotions are made and how it sits in the body and the complex relationship between how emotions appear in the body and what happens in the mind.
I got the same from my wife. Feelings buried alive never die.
That's correct.
Boom.
That's
I remembered
correct.
it. There,
Boom.
Michelle.
Boom. Drop the
From
mic.
you to her. That was
That's
important.
it.
That was important because I'm like, that's one she says
Yeah.
all the time.
Buried alive, never die. That's true.
Feelings buried alive never die.
That is so true. That is so true. And I love
Sorry.
things on neuroscience. So there's
Oh.
lots of books on neuroscience.
I'm going to have to introduce you to my wife, and I will see you. You'll have your weekend together. You do all that stuff.
But I
'Cause you guys are
also-
in the same drink.
What you haven't asked me is like what I like to do for fun.
Okay, Michelle
love-
Maldonado. What do you like to do for fun?
I love humor. So I love watching stand up. I often
Favorites?
will play. So I love Kevin Hart.
Okay.
I love Dave Chappelle. I like Michael Yo.
I was thinking about Chappelle as I was coming in this morning.
Yeah, I didn't like him when he was younger. As he's older,
Oh, he's so brilliant.
he's
brilliant.
so he's so thoughtful
He's
and
brilliant.
connects.
He's
So in
genius
his
level.
older years,
He is
I
genius
really
level.
appreciate him.
His comedy
Yeah.
is genius level.
And for physical fun, when I'm not laughing, I like to roller skate. Anybody who spent a few minutes talking with me knows my secret. And my secret is I travel with my skates in my trunk.
Really?
So, and I don't inline. I am old school and a purist. I skate on 4 wheels.
Now, I'm going to date us back to the 80s and the 70s. Did you watch roller derby growing up?
I did not.
Okay.
I was the kind of kid that you had the good music playing. So it was a combination. Do you dance or do you skate? And sometimes you just put the two together.
Well, that's fantastic. That's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I've never skated. I have no intention of ever
You're
skating.
missing out.
No, I'm not.
Yeah.
Because I know I would fall, I would break something.
Oh.
Delegate Maldonado, what are you working on? Let's cap this
Yeah.
thing. What's your priority this session?
So I was recently appointed by Leader Scott to lead our caucus's Affordable Housing Policy Committee.
Okay.
So I've done a lot. I do a lot in the affordable housing space. As a child, I had some housing and food insecurity. There were periods in my life where it was a little difficult, and we lived in a camping trailer. And I tell people it's not a mobile home. It's kind that you hooked up to a back of a car. It was really hard times. And so I understand intimately what it's like when you don't have stable housing. How do you learn in school? How do you work at work? It's very hard when you don't know where your food's coming, where you're going to put your head down on the pillow. So put forth some.
So the trauma of those kids and their housing really spoke to you.
Oh, 100%.
That was the initiator. Was your own life experience?
I could connect to it.
Yeah.
I understand the truth of it.
Okay.
And I also understand the possibilities of what can happen when you overcome it.
Clearly.
When you move to the other side of it.
Clearly.
But people need help to be able to do that. And I don't think that help is a handout. I think it's a hand up. And so I put forth some housing bills. One of them got through. I'm also really passionate about wage parity, wage pay parity. And I put forth a bill that is really tracking what a number of states are already doing, which is requiring that employers disclose the pay range for the positions they're putting out for hire, and that they can't require people to share their salary history.
Okay.
And if they don't, also they cannot use that against them in the hiring process.
Yeah, I've had several instances lately, and I've been talking to folks in the political world, and they'll say, I screwed up when they asked me how much I wanted to make. And I say, no, start the conversation. What do you think it's worth?
Yeah, that's a good question. Turn it back on them.
Don't even answer the question. Turn it. No. What's it value to you?
Yes.
Where are you pricing this? Not where I price myself. Delegate, it's been a distinct pleasure and honor getting to know you in our short time here. I see my wife almost
what an honor.
Transposed. We're both named Michelle, but the mindfulness and the dealing with the trauma and just everything you've expressed. It's neat to see someone get up off the couch, be encouraged, and get in there and try to bring about the change and the transformation that has been a part of your life all along. And I hope you'll continue in that role no matter where you are in the political world. And I wish you success in that lane.
Thank you.
Because I see problems in our political future, and we need an America that doesn't have the divisions in the trenches. And I will invite you to a book that I'm reading. It's a new favorite of mine, The Left and the Right, How the Political Spectrum Misleads and Harms America.
I've noted that. I will.
It's a short little book. It's
I
one of
love
my favorites because it's
Thank
short.
you. I appreciate that. And I appreciate the well wishes. And what I will say is that there is hope and there is vision. I've had people at the federal level, when they learned that I was running, reach out to me to say, you're not alone. You wanting to bring this level of compassion and civility and accountability to politics, we're watching and we want that too, and we're trying. There are people that were just elected into the new class of Congress who also bring that in. And there are people here at the state level and the local level who also want that, but it's hard because it is not how the game is designed, and people often look at that as a weakness as opposed to a strength. And I'm here to show people that it is one of the most powerful ways to lead and to be a representative.
Well, as you continue, write down those beliefs because it'll challenge you.
Yes.
Politics will find the cracks.
Yes, they will. They already have.
And I'm sure.
And you got to shore them up.
And
you got to shore it up.
Believe me.
Yes.
Anyway, Chris Saxman on the VIP podcast, available on Spotify, YouTube, and Apple. This podcast is brought to you by VCTA, the Broadband Association of Virginia and Virginia Free, of which I am its executive director. Thanks for joining us, and please subscribe.